Well, I have good news for you today. The good news today actually comes from a church that no longer exists. It's the church in Laodicea. That's in Turkey. As you know, it comes from Revelations chapter 2 and 3. And on the map, you can see that we're at church number 7 in the 7 or 8-part series. And we're looking at the church at Laodicea. In the Roman Empire, we notice that the first church, Ephesus, that city was the political center. Smyrna was the commercial center. Pergamos was the religious center. Thyatira was the trade union center. Sardis was the wealth and power center. And Philadelphia was the cultural center. Remember, that city was planted to be a missionary for the Greek culture and language. And today we're looking at Laodicea, and Laodicea was the banking center of the Roman Empire. If we assigned a time period to each of these 7 churches, we notice that the church we're looking at today, Laodicea, began somewhere around 1900 and exists today. It's a church of missionary activity, but it's also the church of infidelity because it is lukewarm. This is a picture of one of the city gates at Laodicea. As you know, Barbara and I were there almost exactly 10 years ago, and we found it to be one of the highlights, really, of our lives to go there. This was just reconstructed. It was totally torn down, but archaeologists have tried to piece things together, and they put this gate up. It's just very small compared to the magnificent gate that used to be there. Actually, there were 2 gates, one on each side of the city. Laodicea's background, well, it was founded by Antiochus II way back in the 3rd century, and it was named after his wife. His wife's name was Laodice. And Laodice was the mother, FYI, of Cleopatra. And it's known for its strategic locations. You know how today we have like 2 cities or twin cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul? Well, back then they had 3 cities. It was called the Tri-City. And here you see a picture of Asia Minor. These are the roads. This is actually a road map of Asia Minor. And Laodicea is right here where the arrow is. And the other 2 cities that make up the Tri-Cities are Colossae, where remember Paul wrote a book to the Colossians, and we have Hierapolis. So those 3, they're not far apart, 6 to 10 miles between all of them. And those cities are unique, and we'll get into some of the uniqueness today as we go on. But you can see anybody coming from the east would go through Laodicea. And in fact, if we don't show it on the map here, but at the lower right-hand area of the screen, it's not on the map, but it's off the map, it would be Jerusalem. It would be where the land of Jesus was. And then off to the top left-hand side would be the city of Rome. So anyone going from Palestine to Rome would have to go through Laodicea if they were going by the roads. So it became a strategic city because of its location. The background, we've told you, was founded by Antiochus II. It was a strategic location, and it was a banking and exchange center. And it was known for its black wool and eye medication. In fact, it was known more for the black wool than anything else. The black wool came from sheep that were unique to this area, and the sheep produced a wool that was shiny, and it was known all over the area as a garment district. And in fact, it was very much to Asia and the Roman Empire like France is today to the garment industry. It was that important, and that's how the city actually got most of its money, was from the garments. The first century population was between about 20 and 30,000. It was militarily strong. It had good geography. It wasn't up on the top of a mountain like some of the cities we've looked at, but it was militarily strong because they had so much money. They had lots of army there to guard it. And it is in somewhat of a valley, so it cannot be approached very easily from other directions. A weakness was its water supply, and we'll show you some pictures of that. This is a great message from Jesus to this church, and it coincides perfectly with the city's background. It was destroyed by an earthquake in 60 A.D. Now, I've already told you that some other areas in Turkey were destroyed by an earthquake in 16 A.D., and there are other earthquakes as well. But the one in 16 A.D. was especially devastating. But then there's this one in 60 A.D. that destroyed Laodicea. Laodicea was so rich that the Roman officials offered to help rebuild the city. And guess what? They said no thanks. They said no thanks. Roman officials said, we have a stimulus package for you. And the Laodicean people said, we don't need it. We're okay without it. We'll rebuild our own city. And they did. Here's a picture of the black sheep of Laodicea. We think they're probably extinct today. These sheep are black. They're not necessarily the ones from Laodicea, but just to give you a picture. We have a guy who wrote about the sheep in Laodicea in the 19th century. And he went there as a young man, and he said, these black sheep are nearly extinct. And then his name is Ramsey, by the way, and then he went back 40 years later to the same area, and he reports that he couldn't find a single black sheep. So evidently, this species no longer exists. Of course, there are black sheep, but they don't have this fine wool that Laodicea was known for. Here's a picture of Laodicea. This is where we actually parked the bus. You can see it's a gravel road, and it's a parking lot. And off in the distance, you can see some of the ruins of Laodicea, but the road was not good enough that the bus could travel on it. So we had to park and we had to walk. And here are some of the ruins, a little bit of a close-up of those ruins. And you can see there are rocks there that you could actually climb on. And so I was wanting to get good pictures, so I actually climbed up on some of those rocks. And we had a retired school teacher with us, and she asked me if I would help her up on one of the rocks, and I did. And so she was getting along very well. And then while I'm taking pictures, guess what happened? She fell off the rocks, and she broke her arm. And I felt so badly about that, but off to the right in this picture, you can see there's a group of people who were picnicking, and they had an automobile. And we were glad they were there because they actually took her in the car back to the bus, and our trip to Laodicea was shortened because we ended up at the hospital. Now, one of the things I'd like for you to see in this picture is at the very background, you can see at the top there's a mountain, and this mountain is covered in white, which looks like snow, but it's not snow. It is calcium deposits from the springs at Hierapolis. It's over 6 miles away,